Test, 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 test. Hey everybody! Hey everybody! Hey everybody! Hey everybody! It has been a hot minute. I just had life basically get in the way. I was recently in Vancouver visiting my brother, and we went to a Vancouver game, and I did wear my Boston hat, but I wanted to support the Canucks, and the Canucks right now are playing well in the playoffs. But we have a loaded podcast to talk about. We got the draft, we got the Bruins and Leafs series to talk about, and we have the Bruins and Panthers series to talk about. But we can initially talk about what's on the screen right now, the Patriots draft. And as you see here, they got their quarterback. They got Drake May with the 3rd overall pick. A lot of people were unsure what they were going to do. Everybody thought they might trade down. Everybody thought they might trade up. But they probably saw something that nobody else saw. And that was Drake May was to them their best choice, and I think he is the best choice compared to Jaden Daniels, compared to J.J. McCarthy, compared to Caleb Williams, who I watched an interview with Caleb Williams, and he didn't seem like he wanted to come to the Patriots. He just didn't seem all that jazzed about the idea. But I don't think the Patriots were going to be able to trade up into number one. Sorry, I just had to turn myself down a little. I don't think they were going to be able to trade up to the 1st overall pick. I think the Bears were always going to take Caleb Williams, though I was thinking that they might take Marvin Harris Jr., but pretty much the rest of the draft went the way that it kind of ought to, except with the 8th pick, the Atlanta Falcons chose Michael Penix Jr., and I was like, oh, that's a cool move. They got a young quarterback for the future. Totally forgot they just paid Kirk Cousins like 3 years, like $100 million. So, and Michael Penix is 24. So by the time he starts, potentially, he'll be 27, 28. So, I don't know if that was the best decision for Atlanta, but we'll see. Maybe it's going to be the best player in the draft. Who knows? It's the draft. It's always flip-floppy every year. And then the Patriots' next pick that they chose was staying on offense. They decided to take Jalen Pork, if that's how you say his name. They did want Xavier Legette. I think that's how you say his name as well. But he was unfortunately snatched by the Bills, I believe, just before them in the 2nd, or just before them at the end of the 1st. He was on the radar, but I don't think the Patriots really wanted to trade up just for one guy. Because all the teams there would know what the Patriots want to do. So I think they just decided, well, let's just stick to our guns and take a guy. Knew that was gonna go off, but he's 6'1", 203. Played 15 games, 14 starts. Had 9 touchdowns. Was honestly, I think, a better player than I think a lot of people are giving credit for. Though they did actually trade down. Sorry, I forgot about this. They did actually trade down. From their 2nd pick. They went from the 3rd to the 5th. And because I think Legette wasn't there, so they didn't want to scramble and take a guy. They probably wanted to trade down, get more assets, and it actually was very beneficial, because then the 3rd round pick, they chose an O-lineman. The 2 positions that every single Patriots fan has been saying they've needed for a long time. They finally drafted a wide receiver and an O-lineman, and not just one, but but they drafted 2, and they drafted a 2nd wide receiver. And this wide receiver, Javion Baker is apparently an underrated player. I think he potentially might be the steal of the draft. Again, we never know because it is the draft. Then they decided to go CB with the 6th round pick, and I kind of wondered why. But then I looked at their CB core, and I was like, yeah, okay, he'll mainly just be depth, but the defense was absolutely perfect last year. This next pick surprised me a little, though it's kind of a typical fashioned pick for the Patriots. They chose a quarterback. They're following exactly in their footsteps from the Bledsoe draft and the Brady draft. Maybe Joe Milton is better than Drake May. Who knows? But we all know that the best thing for a top 3 quarterback is competition. Yeah, maybe Joe Milton might be better. He might be worse. We have no idea. But having Drake May competing against Joe Milton, it's probably going to be Drake May's team. But you gotta play the better guy. Joe Milton doesn't have any expectations, but he has that chip on the shoulder. Like, if I can take this team from a 3rd overall selection in the same draft, then I know I'm going to be good. Versus the 3rd overall guys thinking, well, I'm not going to let a 6th round quarterback take over this team. I'm going to push harder and be better. And then the last pick was actually a tight end, which again, they desperately need it. I will recount my words. Not desperately, because they do have Hunter Henry, but again, this player, a lot of people say, is a steal of the draft. Honestly, the Patriots draft to me was absolutely perfect. The only surprising pick, I think, was a cornerback, but it was the 6th round. You're going to take a chance on a player, and depth for the cornerback position is completely ideal. Might as well show up just in case Gonzalez gets injured, or just in case somebody else gets injured. But like, they had the number 1 defense last year when they had a terrible offense in the past few years. Now they've picked they picked an offensive player pretty much the whole draft. So their offense is completely revamped. They have new O-linemen. They have new wide receivers. They have a new quarterback that can actually run. And even if he doesn't like come out with speed every single time, I think he'll be better at maybe doing at least the Brady run, getting 5 yards. Brady wasn't the fastest, but he always he knew to run rather than throw the ball away. And that was the issue with Mac Jones. He never really understood how to deal with pressure. But I'm not here to shit talk Mac Jones. Maybe he just needed a new team, and now he's the backup for Trevor Lawrence. And maybe he can be better than Trevor Lawrence. That might be a statement that'll come back to me. But honestly, I was extremely happy with the draft. All of the guys that they chose, none of them were reaches. Joe Milton was pretty much in the 6th. Dial I didn't see. But again, it's the 6th round. Pretty much in my mind, after I'd say the 5th round, then you can kind of start being a little experimental. You can be okay, this guy's actually available. Let's take a chance on him. And if it doesn't work, it's a 6th round pick. Javion Baker in the 4th round, I believe the 4th round. For some reason, it doesn't tell me. I think is an absolute steal. He ran for 1,000 receiving yards. He got 7 touchdowns. He played all 13 games with 12 starts. That's huge for a Big 12 conference. He just got better and better every single year. And I that. That's a huge pickup. And not even just picking up one wide receiver, because one wide receiver doesn't change much. But then picking up an O-lineman, it's a little scary that he missed 2 games due to injury, but I mean, it depends on the injury. 2 games isn't that much. But that's a huge pickup. Caden Wallace 6'4", 314. Like, they're gonna have a big O-line group in front of Drake May. They did want Leggett, but honestly, Pork, looking at his stats and seeing the interviews and hearing him talk about the team that he plays on, he seems like a Patriot. He seems like he wants to be here. He seems like he's excited about, like, not even just starting, but just being on the team. And then the number one guy was Drake May. I also unfortunately wanted to do 10 minutes for each segment, and I've gone over that by a couple of seconds. But Drake May, 6'4". Sorry. Drake May, 6'4", way bigger, not way, but bigger than Mac Jones. And everybody kind of figured the Patriots were going to take Drake May. I was really hoping we didn't take Jaden Daniels. Yeah, Jaden Daniels could be the better quarterback. But he was 23, 24, and Drake May is 21. So like that in my head, that made the decision the easiest thing ever. Would I have loved to trade up to number one and get my brain is already forgetting his name. To getting the guy, Jesus, I had his name and I'm mixing up these names. To Williams, to get Caleb Williams. Yeah, I would have loved Caleb Williams, but honestly, it didn't seem like he really wanted to be here. But I'm very, very happy with this draft. Now we can talk about my favorite part, the Boston Leafs series. And I'm not here to be a typical Boston fan and shove it in the face and talk about the history and talk about the yada yada and vice versa. There's Leaf fans who are out there who are like, oh, we made it a series. Okay, but you still lost. And I'm not saying that as a Boston fan. I'm saying that as an NHL fan. Like, you have to do something drastic. Look at Florida. They traded the two best players for Tkachuk, who was a great player on I forget what team he originally came from. But like, they made one move and it like opened up the whole team. Like they decided, let's just build the team around this guy. Sorry. And honestly, to my mind, to me, in my personal opinion, and again, it's not coming from a Boston fan, it's coming from a NHL fan. Matthews is not the guy. Marner is not the guy. Nylander is not the guy. You wasted money on Tavares. You have wasted Riley's career. Riley is a top defenseman, but he's not going to be able to cement his name in history if he continues playing for a team that loses in the first round. And again, that's not coming from a happy Boston fan. That's coming from a Boston fan that grew up in a Leafs family to see this same thing happen every single year. And let's say Toronto beats Boston, and then let's say Toronto loses in the second round. Nobody will care. Some people would care about that win, but then nobody would care. Like, is the Leafs' next goal to win the second round? And then in another 20 years they win the third round, and in another 20 years they win the fourth round. Like, you're not going to have anything change if you don't change yourself. They've had the same core, like they've had the same core come in at once for like 7 years. They drafted Matthews, and then they drafted Marner the year later, and then they drafted Nylander the year later, and then you overpaid them. Not saying the bad players. I'm saying you gave them way too much money when they haven't proved anything to you, and you have then no money to spend on your depth, and then you blame the depth that you don't have depth scoring, and then you can't re-sign those guys. And then you have to build a whole new depth every single year. It's like, because you don't have money. You can't spend money on defense. You can't spend money on a goalie, and you can't spend money on depth because you have $80 million stuffed into 4 players. And yeah, again, Matthews out of those 4, 4. Matthews, Mona, Nylander, yeah. Out of those 4, Matthews is the better player. But there's the one thing that and I'll get to it in a sec, but the one thing that Boston is playing well against Florida right now is they're using the too many cooks in the kitchen aspect against Florida, and that's what Toronto's issue is. They have too many head chefs. They have too many people who want to be in charge. I honestly, that what they should have done was given the captaincy to Riley at least for a couple years, not sign Tavares to that horrible contract, actually see improvement from Matthews, Marner, and Nylander before instantly giving them way too much money. Now Matthews, from having the same results since you've drafted him, is now going to be the highest paid player in the NHL. Even if McDavid and the Oilers don't make it, they've still proven them. He's still proven himself time and time again. But Matthews hasn't proven anything. And again, that's not me saying as a Boston fan. That's me saying as an NHL fan. Like, they've now handicapped themselves because even if they trade one of those 3, they can't trade Tavares because he has they all have kind of horrible contracts, but he's like 32. Nobody's going to want to trade for Tavares. Luckily, Tavares' contract does end next year, and they've handicapped themselves with Marner and Nylander. Though, I will say, without Matthews, that's why they won Game 5 and 6. Because they didn't have Matthews. They didn't have the 69 regular season goal scorer trying to get goals constantly. Matthews is not a team player. He doesn't know how to be a team player. He doesn't even know what he is. He has the body of a power forward, but then plays like a sniper, and that doesn't make any sense to me. Play like a power forward and get goals. Like, you look at, again, it's a weird example because of what happened recently, but I'm talking about the player here. Look at Lucic. He's a power forward, and he got like 40 to 50 goals, maybe less, but he got 40 to 50 goals because he was actually using his body. You look at Pastrnak. He's on par with Matthews, but he's improved his defensive game. That's why everybody was kind of saying he's kind of in the shadows right now, but his defensive game has actually improved. He's actually worth the money that he's paid. But Matthews is not. Matthews wasn't there for Game 5 and 6, and they actually played a good game. That's why Toronto was able to come back and tie the series. And then Matthews came back, and McMahon came back, and Samsonov came back, and then it all fell apart because you have too many cooks in the kitchen, basically. I say trade whatever you can get for Tavares. Make Riley the captain for at least a year. Just give him that jersey for at least 1 year. Trade Matthews and make this Marner and Nylander's team. But that's not going to happen. What's going to happen is they're probably going to sign Tavares to 1 more year. They're going to trade Marner and Nylander, or one of the two, and then Matthews is probably going to leave in 3 years because that's only how long he's signed his contract for. There's 3 years. That's all. That's all you have left of your so-called superstar. If the Bruins had Pastrnak for 3 years, they would have already been talking about an extension. Yeah, Matthews may sign an extension. But why would he? Why wouldn't he just sign it before? He signed a 3-year because he knows this team isn't going to go anywhere. He knows he's not going to go anywhere with this team. So why not move him for assets? And I think that's what's happening. I think this is like a weird prove it deal for 3 years. Even though he has proved himself, he hasn't really proved himself as the guy. So I think this, like I said, this is just this is a prove it deal for 3 years, and then at the end of that 3 years, if he hasn't proved himself, I think they're gonna trade him. Though the issue with that is, so he's just gonna want to be paid a bunch of money. So we'll see what happens. But I don't think the future looks great for Toronto, like, because they don't have any prospects, they don't have any picks, they don't have. They might lose the best player in 3 years. They're gonna lose their captain, who I don't think they should have signed. But I'm gonna move on because I'm now past my 10 minutes. But now, like I said, we're gonna talk about Boston. I don't know if I'll get copyrighted for having the Coors Light there, so I'll put it down. Boston played a fantastic game. Honestly, a perfect game. It would have been a perfect game if Florida didn't score. That's how perfect this game was. Boston couldn't have done anything better in that game. Swayman is on fire. They're probably going to start Allmark game 2, and that's completely fine because might as well have both goalies be hot. But Boston played the best game I've probably ever seen in the playoffs. They used Florida's. Florida has an energy to them, but like a kid in a candy store energy. It's a little chaotic, and they don't know what's gonna happen. But Boston, like basically put a leash on them. Like, they knew exactly how to handle Florida's energy. The second they tied the game. Honestly, even without tying the game was still perfect, and they even took less shots. They even lost a lead, didn't have a lead, I don't think. Maybe I'm thinking of game 7. But they came back, like, after not having a lot of shots, but honestly playing a perfect game. They went down 0-1, and then they just kept fighting. And then the first game tying goal, Mason Lohrei, a beautiful top shelf shot. Mason Lohrei, he's going to be a Boston Bruin. I'd say a full-time starter next year. And then the goal to get into the lead, I might be mixing up names here because it was 5-1, but the goal to get into the lead was Dad Carlo. His son, he literally was late. He showed up to the game 2 hours before and then scored because his wife was giving birth, and he scored on his son's birthday. What a beautiful story. And then Justin Brazeau, a beautiful pass from I forget who, could have been a 2-on-1, and then use his speed to make it a one-on goalie, and just went right, left, up, and just it was chef's kiss beautiful. And I couldn't have asked for anything better. Yeah, Florida might come back and tie the series, but honestly, Boston, number one thing, Boston needs to use that energy against them, and that's what they did in Game 1. They have to use that energy against them, and I'm fully happy with them starting Allmark, but Allmark does understand why Sway has been starting, because it went Allmark, it went Sway, Allmark, Swayman, and why it was only Swayman is because that was the rotation. Rotation worked throughout the whole year. Why not continue it? And that's what they did. And it was working in the playoffs, and then they put Allmark back in, and Allmark lost. Then they put Swayman in, and he won. So you're like, okay, Swayman actually has a record. Let's put him back in. And then he just was dominant. He did lose Game 6, or Game 5 and 6, I think. But then they put him in for Game 7, was dominant for Game 7. They put him in for Game 1, dominant for Game 1. And I'm honestly, this is a knock on wood type, whatever I'm gonna say, knock on wood. But I think Boston, if they continue to play their game and they use the energy of the other team against them, I think Boston could go all the way this year. I would love for them to get to the third round, but we got to focus on the second round for now. But this is a different Boston team from last year. They have a hunger that we haven't quite seen in a while. Like, yeah, they've won series before, and they've gone to the Stanley Cup final, but it just feels like this team is different. It just feels like these players want it more. Also against a team that ruined the Cinderella story last year. And that was a heart-wrenching game to watch. I threw my hat down because I was so mad. But there's nothing you can do about last year. You can only look forward. And I'm looking forward all the way till the end. And I'm extremely happy about the results that are in my head. But, this team is a different team. They want it. I think this is their shot. And I would be extremely happy if Brad Marchand got to prove the haters wrong by winning a second Stanley Cup. I know I'm talking about the Stanley Cup and it's only the second round, but you gotta have hope for your team. I got a couple more minutes left of the podcast, but man, these playoffs are exciting. I will, off the top of my head, if I can remember the other series, I think Dallas beat Colorado. Vancouver, I actually didn't see. I'll quickly look it up, actually. Should have probably had this ready, but that's okay. Let's see. That bracket. We have... Oh yeah, we have the Rangers and Carolinas 2-0. Vancouver and Edmonton actually haven't played. That's why it wasn't off the top of my head. Dallas did lose to Colorado last night. My final four teams, I think in my head at least, will be Boston against. I actually originally had Carolina, so I can't change my vote now. But honestly, I did change it, but I realized Boston and the Rangers can't go to the finals. But I think it's going to be Boston and Carolina, Vancouver, and I actually had Dallas beating Colorado. I think Dallas beating the Golden Knights was huge. And I have hope for Dallas to win. And in the final two, I think it'll be Boston and against Dallas and Vancouver. Honestly, this series is tough to choose because either team could make it. I do actually want Edmonton to make it just because of McDavid. It's just like the Leafs having Matthews. He's a good player, but he hasn't done much to help the team. I mean. So maybe Edmonton wants it, but I mean Vancouver is playing great, though they did have a weaker team, and I thought the Kings would have actually been a better opponent to Edmonton. So right now the only two teams that have actually had to work more is Boston and Dallas, because they actually went to Game 7s. All other games went to 5 or went to 6. So nobody really has had to work harder than those two teams. So maybe it might be Boston and Dallas in the finals. Could be Boston and Vancouver. Could be Carolina and Dallas. Could be Colorado and Florida. It's the NHL playoffs. That's the most exciting thing. Is anything can happen. Perfect example of last year. Like I said, Boston has the best regular season they've ever seen, franchise and NHL, and then even is up against Florida 3-1, and Florida, just something about Florida last year, just wanted it more. And like I said, that was a heart-wrenching thing to see, but that is the end of the podcast. So for now, be awesome, stay awesome, and rock on. Peace.